Good morning. Welcome to Veterans in Politics International Candidate Endorsement Interview. I am Mack Miller, candidate for Assembly District 5. I am also a non-voting member of the panel and have no bearing on the endorsements that the Veterans in Politics give to either candidates on the being questioned today. We'd like to welcome and thank for being here for candidates for State Assembly District 37, Shea Backus, Assemblyman Jim Marchant, and Robbie, Lucille, Pearce. Thank you very much. We'd like to begin by giving each candidate up to 2 minutes to tell the panel why they should be endorsed. But first, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Ron Q for Clark County Treasurer, Michael Broadway Real Estate, Real Water, and Lakeside Business Suites. And with that, we'll start with either candidate on why they should get the endorsement from Veterans in Politics. That's fine, we can start from the far end.
I'm Robbie, Lucille, Pearce, and I am running for 3 issues, one being criminal justice. I feel that we should not have necessarily nonviolent members of society who's committed a crime to just be taken care of. I think they should be re-educated so that way they can be a contributing member to society. I'm a public school teacher, so I am for education, and I think we need to reorganize the way we do education. And I also was under the impression that when we voted for recreational marijuana, that the revenues would be coming to education, and I didn't see that happen. And my last issue that I'm running for is clean energy. I think in the desert, we definitely need to be a leader in solar and wind power. And I'm also a Desert Storm veteran.
Thank you. My name is Jim Marchant, current Assemblyman for District 37. And I'm looking to go back to kind of keep doing what I was doing up there. I was ranked by numerous rankings that rank legislators and how they vote in the top conservative. And I'm looking to do that again. A lot of my issues are very sympathetic to veterans. Matter of fact, one of my bills last session was to give veterans that wanted to start businesses an amnesty period on business licenses. And when Barbara Ciesielski, our Secretary of State, had the same bill, I actually pulled my bill and worked with her on that. So I'm looking to go back up there and doing the same things I did up there is to try to make Nevada red again. That's my goal. Unfortunately, the Democrats right now are in control, and I'm going to try to remedy that.
You're sitting next to 2 Democrats. Good afternoon. My name is Shea Backus, and I'm a 3rd generation Nevadan, a proud graduate of Clark High School. As a product of our public education, I've benefited and continue to thrive from it. So I'm hoping all Nevadan children also have that same opportunity. As a small business owner, I ensure that my employees earn a livable wage and receive health care benefits, and I believe Nevadans should also have those same benefits. Most recently, and what really got me to run for this office is last summer I ended up taking care of my father-in-law, who's a retired lieutenant colonel, who started suffering from vascular dementia. And we had wonderful benefits. He had TRICARE, Medicare, and also VA benefits. But I saw a lack in our system with respect to caregiver needs, as well as ensuring he got the extra, I guess, like hospital beds, things like that, in a prompt manner. And I know the VA is trying to do what it can do with like a 5-day turnaround. But those are things that I'm going to be advocating for, as Assembly District 37 has a lot of seniors and a lot of veterans, and we need to make sure that they continue to live independent, safe, and healthy.
Thank you very much. We'd like to open the floor to the panel for any questions that they may have at this moment.
Robert Foust, U.S. Army VIPI member. Mr. Marchant, did you vote for the commerce tax?
I did not.
Okay,
I was
That's
Vietnam.
good. That's all I wanted.
Okay.
So here's my next question, and my real question. I just wanted to know if you voted for the commerce tax. Where do you stand on immigration, and where do you stand on the Dreamers, and should they be deported?
Yeah, I think we need to secure our border, definitely. I'm for the wall. And if you've been watching what's going on in Washington, Goodlatte has a bill that I like that has basically 4 pillars of, three pillars and maybe a 4th one on how to address the dreamers. Definitely want to get rid of the visa lottery. I want to make sure that there's no chain migration, and if we have to, we could address, like President Trump did, giving them a pathway to citizenship after 12 years, like he said, and if they don't have any criminal records or have assimilated like they should, then I think that they should be considered but not guaranteed.
Should they have the right to vote?
Absolutely not.
Next.
Definitely, I support our Dreamers' path to citizenship. Growing up with students, even attending law school with students who were born in the United States, speak English, who have never lived in another country, should definitely not be deported back to maybe where their parents were from. I'm obviously not running for U.S. Congress or U.S. Senate, but that's my position with supporting our Dreamers.
I support the DREAM Act. I'm a public school teacher, so I actually have to look these kids in the eye when they're getting ready to graduate. They want to be contributing members of the society. We're not talking about criminals here. And they want to go on to be doctors and lawyers and tradespeople. And they just want to be able to stay here in the country that they've known since they were brought here when they were young children. And they are patriotic and they are here for the country. And they just want to be able to stay here.
Lena, Ocasio, Air Force veteran and real estate broker here in town. I have a question about education. I'm a single mom, middle-class American, and Latina. And the educational savings account really failed my family because the legislature decided not to pass the funding mechanism. So my question is, do you support school choice, which would help a family like mine? I am raising 2 girls on my own, a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old, and do you support the educational savings accounts?
Who do you want to go first?
Do you have the mic on?
Okay, ESAs were a huge passion of mine last session. Normally the governor invites freshmen in to his office to ask him questions, and one of the questions he asked me is, what is your bill to die for? And without hesitation I said ESAs. And the reason is, for the first time, we have an opportunity to affect our public school system and bring a free market alternative in there to force our failing education system into raising their level and truly educating our kids. And when it failed last session, I was extremely disappointed. During the session, right near the end of session, I could see that our leadership on my side were caving to the Democrats who were in control. And I felt helpless. So I happen to be a friend of Governor Jeb Bush, who is a huge school choice advocate. And I reached out to him to see if he could help. He actually sent a couple of people to Carson City to help me lobby to see if we could save the ESAs. And unfortunately, we weren't powerful enough. I mean, we even got Mike Pence to call Governor Sandoval, got what's her name, DeVos to call him, and he ultimately quit taking their calls because I think he really didn't want the ESA. So I was extremely disappointed, and matter of fact, I looked into possibly doing a ballot initiative to get it funded, because that's the only thing that's wrong with it. The law is there, we just need to get it funded, and nobody in our leadership on either side wants to fund it properly, and that's something I'm going to work towards next session to getting it funded.
As I start off today, I'm a proud graduate of our Clark County School District. I went to public school, kindergarten through law school. I'm not in favor of how the ESA is right now because unfortunately, not all parents would be able to send their children to private school with the money that was set aside for ESA at $5,000. There's no private school in Clark County that a parent could send their kid to school. More importantly, the money needed is going to go back into our public school system, and that's where we need to ensure that we provide all of our Nevadan children a proper public education.
I agree that there should be some kind of choice as far as schools, but we already have that. Ms. Bachus said that $5,000 is not going to be enough to put somebody in a child in private school, but we do have choices in the school district. We have charter schools. We have some really good charter schools. We also don't really need to be taking away money from public education. As a public school teacher, I don't necessarily have the technology that I need to be able to teach my students about cybersecurity or programming because of the fact that the computers that I teach on are 10 years, going on 11 years old, and the students have difficulty getting even into the system or getting onto the internet. And I would really like to open it up to my students where we had newer technology so that way we can teach them about cybersecurity and teach them about technological advances and to make a better educated workforce coming out of the high schools.
I'm going to stay along the education lines, but first real quick,
Your name, please?
Leo Bletnitsky, former U.S. Coast Guard, current technology consultant. Just to clarify one thing from the very beginning, there is no proposal ever, or there's ever been, to deport American kids born in America. So that's not the Dreamers. The Dreamers are kids that were brought here after they were born somewhere else. Completely separate from that, Clark County School District, I have 2 kids in Clark County School District. It's not necessarily a funding problem. It is a overloaded administration. It is teachers, in some cases, that don't have support from the administration. It's working alongside teachers that shouldn't be there because they're lazy and they can't be fired because of the union system. And there's a lot of abuse of power at all levels. I'd be curious to know what each of you feels would help to improve the school district. And the second part of that is that a lot of the time, disciplinary problems within the schools are addressed in a arbitrary and capricious manner by the administration and by the deans, who often have very little experience or intelligence. So would you support a citizens review board for the school districts within the state of Nevada to actually oversee issues that parents would then bring, where their kids were either expelled because we have the highest expulsion rate in the country, or suspended because they were victims of assault within the school district, are also suspended because they dared to defend themselves. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I would, absolutely. Our school system needs a lot of overview, and so I would definitely support that. As far as the expenses, I agree with you that the administrative part of our system is overloaded. The breakup of the Clark County School District back in 2015 is slowly but surely being implemented. I think it's going to help a little bit. But we're pushing against a huge machine, and it's hard to get everybody to cooperate and do what's necessary to fix the system. So we've got to continue on, and I agree with some of those reforms. We definitely need a parental or citizens overview, and I would definitely support that.
In the process of the breaking up the school district, we actually have panels at each of the schools that work together with the principal and the administration at the individual schools, dealing with the students at that school, not only with budget, but with discipline, and they're in the process of making this, like I said, it's part of the process of the breakup, and they are putting those boards together. Where we're having difficulty is actually having parents have the time to be able to sit on the boards, because the boards are during school hours. And so that may be a way that we could solve that, is if we made the boards meet not necessarily during school hours, but maybe during times that parents could actually meet with them. And, but that's the problem that we're seeing as far as having parents on our board.
One thing I didn't say to all you, thank you so much for serving this country. The other thing is I wanted to thank Mr. Bletnitsky. I hope I said that correctly. And if you have a title, I apologize for not using it. But thank you for being involved in your children's education. I think that's what's so important in Clark County is we have parents who work around shifts. You know, I mean, we're not your typical 9 to 5 working community. We have parents who work days and some parents that work at night. And so it's hard to be actively involved in their children's education. I had spoken to some school teachers who did, a teacher that came from Guam and said actually the funding wasn't a problem for him, it was really just getting parents involved in their kids' education. And I also see that as a roadblock with respect to expulsions. I had the privilege of, and I continue to do this, but I had the privilege to represent a bunch of teens who were a product of our child and abuse and neglect system. And believe me, I was that person going to those parent-teacher conferences when the kid was getting kicked out of school. And in Nevada, we don't really have expulsion per se, but they do have alternative centers. And it's really weighing between the safety of other students in the class and also, you know, making sure the child is acting in accordance. But I would be interested in hearing more about the review board because I like it for the police department.
Time. We have time for one last question from the panel.
Oh, yeah.
Are you second guessing the moderator here? We have time for one last question from the panel, and then we'll move forward. Do we have any other questions from the panel?
We only got one, there's 3 of us.
Yeah, here, I'll ask a
Ask all
encompassing
three.
question. So, Michael McDonald, Veterans of Politics Legislative Council, Family Civil Liberties Union, Restoring Freedoms, and Reforming Family Courts. My question is in regards to family and criminal law reform. One of the root causes of so many social issues today is anxiety, depression, mental illness, criminal history, drug use, sex trafficking, mass shootings is all happening for the destruction of our families. We have a lot of, our family court is purposely stripping good parents from their own children for money purposes through Title 4D. I ask if you guys are elected that you would support equal parenting legislation to help restore our families and for criminal justice reform, criminal law reform, as we have 25% of the world's incarceration rate, yet we're the land of the free. We have a system that imprisons people for almost any reason, and is filling up our courts and making a profit off of it. Also, veterans, there's almost 22 veterans a day committing suicide. They get labeled as having PTSD or a killer, and they're not able to see their own children. It's soul ripping when you can't do that, and it's one of the causes of that as well. So I ask if elected, would you guys support family and criminal law reform?
I absolutely would. I think that whole system needs to be reviewed and reformed, and I would definitely support it. As a matter of fact, I'd probably sponsor a bill if asked.
That was a loaded question, so let me kind of start on the criminal justice part first. I'm grateful, like in Nevada right now, for those that don't know, but I'm assuming everyone in this room knows, we do have a veterans court, and I think that is completely a wonderful thing, as well as a mental health court, because each individual is treated appropriately and needs can be met adequately, and that's part of the problem. One of the good things with, I got the privilege to kind of hear this question earlier, and I heard people talking about releasing non-offenders early so that we're not blocking up the prisons or keeping people too long. Is I represented a girl who actually got an ankle bracelet, and it really protected her from engaging in sex trafficking and things like that. So there's kind of a perk if a child does get out of jail early, if we're looking at juvenile justice. With respect to the family court, I know there was a lot of legislation that came in place. I feel like it was October 2015 that was really moving towards joint custody being in the best interest of the minor children. I don't practice in family court anymore. I may have 2 less cases, but with that, thank you for your question.
As a previous foster parent, I was a foster parent to over 23 children for between 2008 and 2011. I've actually kind of seen the inside of that. I just recently adopted my grandniece because I was her kinship foster parent, and negotiating the system with the parents being on drugs, and of course always the goal is reunification with the kids when they do have to take them out. And in this case, they did have to remove my grandniece from the situation that she was in. So it was supported in removing her, but it took 2.5 years to resolve this, where she didn't have any stability in her life. And I was just recently able to adopt her. But as far as other criminal justice, like I said, it does need to be reviewed. I don't think there should necessarily be mandatory sentences for nonviolent offenders, especially related to like marijuana. And so there is a lot of things that need to be reevaluated, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the panel?
Of course, there's 2 more.
There was 3 of us, they said only one more question.
A quick question.
I've been given information that we've had a cancellation, so in all fairness, I'd like to open the panel up to a vote to extend the time given to the candidates to answer the additional questions from the panel.
Can we ask the panel
I just have to be somewhere at 1. And I don't want to leave people hanging, but I think I could probably jam over there. I leave here, like.
Be quick.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Yes.
2 more questions, let's do it.
Let's do
Okay.
it. I didn't want to do what's up.
Unanimous decision by the panel.
Okay, so Troy Warren, VIP member. I too am a proud graduate of this school district. I'm a native of the city. Both my daughters also graduated from El Dorado High School, so I've been actively involved in that, and that's actually why I ran for team. One of the things I learned in school, though, was the Constitution, which a lot of it doesn't seem to be taught these days, and I'm a little irritated around that because a lot of our Bill of Rights are being under attack, specifically the Second Amendment. We've got a guy running for governor who's politicizing a lot of things around 10-1 and around banning certain guns that he calls assault weapons, which tells you how ignorant he is. 1, do you support the Second Amendment? And 2, if he is elected, would you support his ban on those weapons?
I absolutely support the Second Amendment. I probably adhere to that constitutional amendment more than anybody. Absolutely would not support any effort to compromise the Second Amendment whatsoever. What part of shall not be infringed don't you understand?
I am a supporter of our U.S. Constitution, including the Second Amendment. However, I do support reasonable regulations in light of what we experienced October 1st. It concerns me, and this is where I will probably differ from Assemblyman Marchant, as I know he supported a bill to take away the concealed weapons permits. I would rather keep that in place.
False.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Marchant said, Assemblyman Marchant said that was false, but I had read that and it really gravely concerned me. So I would not be doing anything to loosen any type of legislation to put weapons into everyone's hands. I do support like situations where people background checks. I think it's really important, and for people that were getting concealed weapon permits, it's important to make sure that they're passing the training in order to secure such permits.
Can I answer that real quick?
Yeah, since it got brought up.
Yeah. I sponsored a bill last session to make Nevada the 12th state to be constitutional carry around the country. And when I submitted the bill to LCB, what I wanted, I specifically said I just want this line taken out of the NRS. Well, what they gave me back was ridiculous. They took out the concealed carry permit part, and I vehemently disagreed with that. Went back down there, I said, no, you can't do that. We have to have the concealed permit still in our system. I want people to be able to get a concealed carry permit. And finally, they put it back in, but my bill didn't get heard, but that's the answer to that. So I definitely want the concealed carry permit system still in there because I want reciprocity with other states, and that's why it's still in there. And I didn't submit my bill the way LCB gave it to me. I made them redo it.
Just so you know, I followed that closely.
Yeah.
Mr. Pearce, I'm giving you the original 2 minutes to answer the original question posed on the other candidates.
Okay. Yes, I do support the Second Amendment. I support the Constitution. We do teach the Constitution. We wait until they're a senior to teach it in U.S. government. We have an excellent government teacher at my school specifically. I do think that there needs to be some oversight though. I don't think that anybody should be able to just walk in and purchase any type of gun. I do think we need background checks. I think we need education. I was in Desert Storm. I know how to shoot assault rifle. But I do think we need oversight with it, just as we need oversight with anything else. Everybody's suggesting oversight with the school district. We have oversight for driver's license and driving a car. Why should we not have oversight with weapons? And again, education, background checks, just to make sure that the person plans on holding it legally and just using it for their self-defense or their hunting.
Steve Sanson Jr., U.S. Army. I find it interesting. Everybody runs for office for a different reason, and I wanted to ask you guys, what is the first thing that you would do if elected, Mr. Marchant, if you continued to serve? What was the very first thing you would do, getting back in there?
Well, a number of things. One of them, like I said earlier, ESAs was a passion of mine. I'd like to figure out how to address that and get it fully funded. Another issue of mine is voter integrity. That's another issue that I'm going to be strongly working on this session. I'll have a number of bills address those issues. And of course, Second Amendment I'm very, very passionate about and want to make sure that that's not compromised at all. And just in general, I'm a businessman, so I want to make sure that the businesses around Nevada here have a level playing field. I want to try to get rid of the ridiculous regulations that are going on here, kind of eliminate the hurdles for them, because if we have a thriving business community here, we'll have a great economy, and that affects everybody positively. So those are the main issues I'll be working on.
As I'm sure you guys have learned before, as a freshman, when you walk in, you only get to support 5 bills, and a lot of the cool big bills get to go to those that are returning. But one of the things that I would probably sponsor is definitely reform of our healthcare directive. I know it's kind of academic per se, but I think it's really important, especially with seniors getting dementia and just our common good, making sure that their future needs are taken care of, as well as looking into caregiver assistance and that whatnot. I would also just in general just go ahead and support trying to improve our public school education here in Clark County and implement appropriate bills or support legislation that's going to hopefully get that taken care of, to listen to others that pertain to that.
My main focus would be education, of course, again, being a public school teacher, supporting our public school education as far as getting more oversight as far as administration goes, yet giving more freedom to the teachers. And they are the ones in the trenches. They're the ones in the classroom with the kids and making sure that they have what they need. As I said, I currently teach technology. I teach computer science. And the computers that I teach on are 11 years old. And 2 years ago, they spent a huge amount of money to update our Wi-Fi in the building, which was really nice. But again, I'm still teaching on computers that are going on 11 years old, and it's very hard to keep them working. I have a class full of 38 computers and 38 students in each class, and I have to make sure that every single computer is working every single period to be able to teach them computer science.
Thank you very much. We'd like to open it up to the candidates now and give you each 2 minutes to tell the panel why they should vote to endorse you for your candidacy.
Okay, I think I've said most of it. Like I said, one of my passions is ESAs, and it was mentioned earlier that there's only 51 or 5,700, depending on how much or what your family situation is, goes to you. And that's just a start. When we add on to it opportunity scholarship issues, we can get I guess, money for the parents back up to around $8,000 or $10,000, and that's my goal. And Shea is right, 5,000 is not enough, and I would actually want to get it funded more. So with those options, we can get opportunities in here from private schools that were just waiting. Once the ESAs passed in 2015, they were waiting to come in here and establish a base and create a really good alternative school system. And so that's what I would do. I would work to give businesses incentives to contribute to this fund, and they were going to. I talked to a number of them, and because that's the goal, is to get the money up where the parents don't have to pay anything for the public or for the private schools. Second Amendment, like I said, is a huge passion of mine, and I'm going to continue to push back on any effort to compromise that. Also, like I said, I'm a businessman, and going to keep pushing to get businesses, all businesses, especially small businesses, a level playing field, and get the government out of their way so they can actually do business. And another thing is repeal the commerce tax. That's a big passion of mine. I think that's a huge burden on all businesses. Right now, it's mainly businesses over $4 million, and I'm going to push to get that whole thing eliminated.
Well, as I said, I am a veteran of Desert Storm. I do access the veteran medical system. I am considered one of their success stories because they've taken very good care of me. But I do know of other veterans that they haven't done as much as they need to, and that we do need to look into that. So it is another concern of mine. We're talking, 22 suicides a day. Because they're taking away they're not only diagnosed with PTSD, but they're taking away their drugs arbitrarily. Just, you can't have them today. And which is causing a huge problem and a huge burden on our veterans and our veterans' families of having to deal with all of these types of issues. And again, education and getting an educated workforce to help out the economy with the state of Nevada, so that way if we do have new businesses that move in, that they don't have to import the type of skills and talent that they are looking for.
Once again, I want to thank everybody for their time today, and most importantly, thank you for our service to our country, including Ms. Pearce, who I get to join this primary with. With respect to veterans issues, the reason why I'm here today is I think my father-in-law, who's probably standing on the side as some of the people asking me questions, would challenge me when we were living together, because he came to live in our house when we built our house. Even though both of us saw differently politically, eye to eye, we were able to have these type of frank conversations about our different beliefs. And through my care of him, I've realized, just as someone who didn't grow up in a military family, the importance of ensuring that your family members know about veteran administration benefits and ensure that they're able to care for each of our veterans when they're getting sick. Another concern that wasn't raised today that I think is completely important is we need to take a look at the opiate epidemic here in Clark County and throughout Nevada. And I feel like a couple years ago, it may have been the leading cause of death. And unfortunately, a lot of our veterans return from service and are prescribed different narcotics for PTSD or other injuries that they suffered, and that is something we definitely need to look at and crack down. And so today I came out because I support veterans. I lived with one of my favorite veterans for several years and learned a lot of different things that our system is missing in healthcare, especially our seniors, and being able to be caregivers and all that good stuff. So once again, I thank you all for your time today.
Thank you. That brings us to our conclusion. We'd like to thank the candidates for Assembly District 37 for being here. Candidate Shea Backus, Assemblyman Jim Marchant, and candidate Robbie Lucille Pearce. I'd also like to thank our panel for being here this morning as well. And of course, our sponsors, Ron Q for Clark County Treasurer, Michael Broadway Real Estate, Real Water, and Lakeside Business Suites. I'm Mack Miller, your moderator and candidate for Assembly District 5, and I'd like to remind everyone that I am a non-voting member of the Veterans in Politics and have no bearing on the candidates and the endorsements here today. Thank you all for being here.